everyone. This is Rashonda Thornton. I am the host of the Dietitian Against Diets podcast show. And in the month of April, it's all about sustainability. And you know what? Sustainability matters everywhere. Our partners at Prairie Farm recognize the role that they play and how to become advocates of this worldwide. Today's farmers, you know what? They're actually practicing more sustainability practices than ever to continue to do the work and to work hard to preserve the delicate balance between Earth and our expanding world. As a matter of fact, Prairie Farms, they actually have these two major products that they're contributing to and they're investing in. And it's the energy and water saving investment project, where they have already totaled over the last 2 years $4.7 million towards investing in making sure our energy practices are on top and also our water. Learn more about their efforts and how they're trying to make this earth a better place. Go to www.prairiefarms.com/about/sustainability. Also, you can find them on Instagram. They're always posting recipes and nutritional benefits of some of their products. And I'm sure for the month of April, they're also going to be highlighting sustainability. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Dietitian Against Diets podcast show. I am your guest, Rashonda Thornton, and I want to introduce you to my guest today. His name is Craig Foust. He's the licensed therapist and owner of Life Counseling here in St. Louis, where his practice is centered around helping people through issues such as depression, anxiety, grief, substance abuse, and trauma-related issues. Over the years of counseling, he's dedicated his career to helping people through emotional and mental struggles. In addition, he's the president of Psychotherapy of St. Louis, which is a professional organization ranging of different types of licensed clinicians and counselors in the mental health community, where anyone can connect and find a mental health professional that meets their needs. So I want to say, Craig, welcome to the podcast show today.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Yes, and I just want to let everyone know, when you get a moment, go back and look on my website. I actually had the pleasure of being interviewed by Craig last week. We connected through another clinical therapist, and just like anything, like minds and people that have similar pathways, they always find a way to meet themselves. So we actually have a lot of different projects working together, and now we're on our podcast show together. So, Craig, I know, as an entrepreneur and as building your own practice, that's a lot to be said about any person. And so the first thing I'm curious about, because I know so many clinicians, and most of the time they're working underneath another company, but you literally got your own practice. So kind of tell me, how you came across this pathway, and kind of what has been the pivotal moments where you recognize like this work and what you're doing is highly needed.
Right. So whenever I originally came into this field, I was working at an agency. So there'd be a lot of other clinicians, and it was with substance abuse, which is something that I hold near and dear to my heart. I like working and substance abuse gave me a lot of experience with a lot of different people, with a lot of different challenges. But as I was working at that agency, I kind of discovered some things that weren't working for me. And one of the big things was I just didn't have the freedom to do the things that I wanted to do, or maybe do them how I wanted them to do them. And it became pretty clear to me that in order to kind of do the work that I wanted to do the way I wanted to do it, that I would have to go out on my own. And actually, most counselors at some point or another do end up going out on their own in some capacity, whether or not that's having their own business like I do, where it's just kind of like a one-person stop, or whether or not it's working with a group of therapists that are outside of agency life or anything, just kind of like figuring out how to do this on our own.
Yeah. No, I think that's a bold step because, like say you have the option of working with an organization or with an agency, and then just having, there's something more to what you're doing that you want to do on your own. And so just having that ability to step out and kind of take chances, and live in that space where you really feel your passion thrives within the counseling community. So, kudos to you in building that out.
Right. Well, and like I said, it gives you opportunities that you never think about. Like which is something that we'll talk about a little bit later, but would have never gotten the opportunity to start my Mental Health Insights podcast or anything like that, because I would have been spending so much time working that I wouldn't have the free time to do any of the other things that are this passion that was within me that I didn't ever have the time to realize I had.
Yeah. No, it's just true because it leads you down pathways you wouldn't have never thought would be there until you step out and try it out. So you're very right about that. As I think about mental health, and I know that it's become more of it's not as much taboo around it. People are recognizing it as a need that's really need to be met when in any community at any age at any stage of anyone's life. But I still know that many people are skeptical. It's still new to them. So for people that do like hesitate on even just having a conversation or kind of even on where to go, like what can you like as a because you're in a counselor, and so kind of like help me to understand, especially to the audience, like how working with a professional can impact their life, and what are some key benefits that the individual can gain with counseling.
So I like first things from hearing that, like, there's a lot of barriers that I think people come into counseling with, and one of them is people start to wonder, is a counselor just going to give me medications,
Mm,
or they wonder, am I going to get diagnosed for something, or does something terrible have to be wrong with me, or have I had to have terrible things happen in my life? And that's not the case. In fact, counselors don't prescribe any medication. So there's kind of a difference in the way that people practice, where you'd have to see someone like a psychiatrist or a medical doctor for that. But that's not really what people associate with
mm-hmm.
counseling. A lot of it is this stigma that gets attached to it, that if I go to see a counselor, there has to be something terribly wrong with me, or I myself am just not self sufficient. And I think you're right that stigma has been going away a lot more lately. And I just think that so many more people are outspoken about it,
Yes.
whether or not it's people going to see a counselor because, like, I have anxiety whenever I'm at work, or I have trouble going to sleep because I have all these crashing thoughts that end up hitting me right whenever my head hits the pillow, or whatever it may be, that people find it more okay to see a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
kind of going to what you were saying, there are benefits that I think people might not quite realize. The most obvious benefit being that you're talking to someone that's not actively involved in your life. So you don't, it's easier to talk to somebody in some ways that you don't know. But the thing that's a real boon is that you don't have to worry about saying something to them
Mm-hmm.
and other people in your life figuring it out or finding out what you said. So
Yes.
there's a confidentiality aspect that is really sacred in the counseling arena. And that becomes something that once people get used to, it's nice because they realize they can say exactly what's on their mind without fear for what the ramifications or repercussions might be.
I find it really interesting because when I think about, it just, I think nowadays, again, like you said, it's become way more acceptable and people, it's not as much of a taboo around it. You look at the movies, back in the 70s and 60s, it's like a person just laying on a couch and they're like looking up in a daze and there's someone they're talking to, which
Not even
there's,
looking at the counselor,
yeah,
right? They're
just not even
looking at the
connected.
wall.
And it's like so you get a feel of like, do I have to be in this place of just as uncontentment or in anxiety or distress where I need somewhere where I need to like just kind of step away and have someone to talk to. But from what I see now, it's like counselors learn how to work with the client, not just sitting back and just listening to them, but you listening to them, but also just working with them on, the communication, making eye contact, doing things to where you're working as a team. Because to me, that's what builds trust,
Right.
And like you said, people are apprehensive because no one's proud to say that they need someone to talk to, especially in a community where that's not the norm. Or if they have family, individuals, or friends that do seek counsel, but they may see only a version two that's an extreme. So I think it's
Right.
really important to just break down those barriers of what people preconceive counseling is and what is beneficial for and who is beneficial for. One of my best friends have always told me that pretty much everyone needs counseling, at some part of their
Right.
life. So again, it's really breaking apart those preconceived notions that it's only needed for someone that is some high distress area of their lives or has some sort of trauma. I think we all had trickles of trauma throughout our lives, and sometimes we just need someone to talk through with it to help us to sort it out.
Right. And counseling can even just be a way for us to help process things in just different ways. So it's funny, I actually just did a podcast about this not too long ago, that even us just saying something out loud to somebody and talking, seeing the way that they react and having them repeat it back or kind of tell us a little bit about what they heard or what they understood about what we said,
Mm-hmm.
it helps activate different parts of our brain, which is important because it helps us process information differently. So if I'm telling you about an experience that, let's say that I had at a grocery store where someone was a real jerk to me, and just the act of me coming and talking about that and saying it out loud, hearing the words that I'm actually saying, and actually hearing you respond to whatever it is that I said or the
Mm-hmm.
experience that I had, helps me process in several more different ways than if I'm just thinking about something on my own. It gives more capacity for our brain to break down an event, especially if it's an emotional experience. So, whenever we actually keep things to ourselves and we just kind of think about it and ruminate in it in our own brain without releasing it, we're actually reducing our brain's capacity to be able to process something.
Hmm. I never looked at it like that. I know when I personally work with clients, so I consult, but on the nutrition end, it's a totally different scope. That is something that I also work with clients on as far as, putting it out there, speaking it out. And through that, we can work through those conversations and find solutions or find a game plan with it. But if we just keep it kind of bottled in, it just cycles and it warps and it conforms and it just becomes to me like a tight knot that just kind of gets overlooked, and people, I think over time people become desensitized to it. So to me, I think it allows people to just kind of be free of whatever it is that they're struggling with, and have someone to, even if it's just to listen, you know.
Right. Well, even you just talking about like that tight knot, like, could you imagine you get that tight knot, and like you said, you just get used to it, you get desensitized to it, and it's just always there. And then sometimes finally actually talking about that tight knot, allowing that knot to actually start to loosen as it becomes expressed, as it becomes made known and explicit through you talking about it, then all of a sudden that knot goes away. And that's a very different feeling, but you might not have realized it.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many different things that our brain and body work as an interconnected system. So whenever we have ideas or things that are bouncing around up here that get stuck, whether or not it's something that's really stressful or it's just a memory that we keep ruminating over or anything like that, it manifests itself in the body somehow. No different than Dr. Bessel van der Volk, who is famous in the field of psychology for all of his different work around trauma, and recognizing how soldiers would behave differently whenever they had a trauma, like their body would not behave in the same way as someone that didn't. And there's so many of us, like you said, that have experienced trauma that have these things that are going on that physically manifest in the body, and we don't always recognize the kind of challenges that it's giving off to us, the kinds of challenges that we're going through because we're just so used to it.
Mm-hmm. And like I say, you become desensitized to it, or you respond in a way that is outside of who you truly are, because you don't know how to express that pain that you're experiencing, or even understand what it is. One thing that, growing up as a little girl, my mom would always say, don't ever look at the person and what they're doing, but understand why they're doing it. It's look at
Right.
the action and why the action is there, because it's deeper than just what they did, but it's actually more so why. And a lot of times they may not know why. And so, I mean, I'm certain someone in your profession, there's a lot of peeling back that you do and work with clients. And it seems like you really have a strong passion for it, because you work, from a spectrum to, you started with substance abuse and you work with teenagers and couples. And I'm sure they're all have their unique way of which you address and work with them. But I'm sure there's some common threads. What are some common threads that you've seen just on your end as a counselor across just people in general when it comes to, their mental health?
So, one of the big things is people actually not being able to communicate things that are going on with them. So, they may be able to, this is kind of getting down to the nitty gritty, but they may be able to actually communicate things that are going on with them in a very like logical sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could tell you that, like, oh, I get angry all the time. But being able to communicate from a deeper sense of, like, I get angry all the time. I get so angry that like my fists shake. And whenever my fists shake, I get so scared of bringing something up to you because I am afraid that you're going to get sick of me being angry all the time
Hmm.
and you're going to eventually leave me. So, like, even just being able to talk and describe something in depth is something that everybody across the spectrum that I work with usually has a challenge with, whether or not it's communicating experiences they've had, or it's communicating about feelings that are going on, or even just like communicating thoughts in a way that the other person can truly understand
Mm-hmm.
is a common thing, because like we're just not used to talking about it, right? We're not always used to talking about our feelings or
Mm-hmm.
experiences, because so many of the conversations that we have, like diving into that level, can become risky.
Very
You
vulnerable.
know,
I was going to say that.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And the person you're talking to may not be the best person to talk to about that,
Right. Well,
because,
and sometimes they are the best person, like a family member or a friend, but you're right. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes you may talk to them and they may just blow it off, or you come downstairs and a family member's crying, and you're like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to say, so I'm just going to sneak out the front door
yeah.
instead of talking to them about that, without realizing that those emotional conversations and that vulnerability is actually the thing that helps build genuine human connection.
Hmm. That's really strong and powerful there, because again, it's the opposite.
Mhm.
Being vulnerable is really what creates more strength, and we have been taught to do the opposite. Strength is
Right.
being rigid, being hard, and being subdued, not really showing emotion. You know, as the more you're talking about this, I just connected to, the work that I do with my clients when it comes to nutrition, because it's it's never really the nutrition. It's
Hmm.
the problem. Quote air quotes for those who are not watching. It's more so what's happening that's causing them to make those choices when it comes to whatever choice that's actually goes against the grain of their health. And
Right.
again, I also think a form of communication when it comes to nutrition is that is grabbing those foods, because those foods represent something. So it's a nonverbal communication, but at the same time, it's it's a common theme as far as individuals, and the struggles that I find that they have, that's underneath all of those different patterns, those habits, those mindsets. It all boils back down to something um, that's deep inside them, that they really don't know what it is, but all they know is they keep doing the same reaction, the same
Right.
response, the same feelings, the same feeling, like everything's just a constant cycle, and they have no idea why they are put in this cycle and why they can't get out. And at
Right.
the end of the
It
day,
has
it's
some
always
meaning
boiled
to
down.
them.
And so I always have this common thing that I say, you know what, nutrition isn't about food. It's about understanding who you are and recognizing the tools that you use with working with your health and self love and self care. It's really allows you to kind of change those conversations, change those thoughts,
Mhm.
help you to recognize what's keeping you in this place. It's not the only answer to help you to get there, but it's a part of it. But
Right.
that's, as a dietitian, I really recognize it's not just about helping people to it's not about losing weight. Lose weight don't mean
Right.
happiness. It's
Well,
other
I
things that's
love.
happening.
Oh yeah, and I love that you said that, because what you and I do is probably not as different as people may think about. Like a lot of times, people come in to probably see you just like they come in to see me for a problem that they think that they're wanting to get solved. And a lot of times they do need to get solved, right? Whatever that problem may be. Like someone may come to see me because they're like, hey, like me and my spouse, we're fighting all the time and we're tired of fighting. And so they come to me without the fighting,
Mm-hmm.
but they may not necessarily realize that we're not going to address as much of the fighting. We're going to address like this communication and like how you two experience each other and how you two show each other that you love and care about each other. But once we address that, all of a sudden the fighting goes away. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
I imagine this has to be very similar for you, where people come in and you can work on some of the behaviors that kind of brought them in, but there's a deeper level work
Yes.
that takes place, that once they kind of realize this and once they kind of step into it, they get to have a different experience around the way that they eat food.
Yep. It's very true. And, it takes a lot of listening. And I think that's actually a part I want to talk about a little bit more, because I think half, the work that you do is really just listening, and listening
Mhm.
for those cues, and the language, and the body language, everything that comes with it, because, you know, just the words itself is not going to be a reflection of that
Mhm.
person. It's everything that wraps around it. So one area I do want to me, I felt like you talking about how we connect in certain areas, and for us, what we do. A common thing that I see, especially when it comes to clients that reach out to me, it's that self-esteem piece.
Mhm.
And I tell people, just for you to make that step, to make that call to talk to me, that's a big step, because I know it's not easy to come to someone and say, hey, I really need to work on my body image, my health, my nutrition, and I really need your
Right.
help. No one is proud to do that. So I always commend people, day one, that, that's pretty bold to just be able to do that. Because I know a lot of it hovers around your self image, your self esteem. And I know that's one of the areas that you work in too. And so I guess one of my questions is to you, like, how have you seen, how from a kind of from a therapist perspective, like, how have you seen this expressed unknowingly by individuals when they come? Because I'm assuming this is like part of everybody's
Mhm.
story, was in
Right.
the front end or the back end of any conversation. But like, what are some ways that you've seen people unknowingly are expressing, the self-esteem piece that's lacking?
So self-esteem is usually manifested in therapy by like how comfortable is this person showing me who they are, and like who they fully are. So often we show our lack of self-esteem by hiding parts of ourselves because we're not comfortable showing those other people, because we feel like that if we show those parts of ourselves to people, that it won't be good, whether or not it's going to cause an issue in a friendship or cause a relationship that's really important, like a spouse, whether or not it's going to cause them to look at you differently.
Mm-hmm.
So we start to get into this place where we don't we almost become ashamed of part of ourselves, and so we don't show as much of it, which is reflected in low self-esteem, which are usually people that do not want to talk about things that are going on with them, or don't want to share things about themselves because they're afraid that someone's going to look at that and they're going to start to look down on them, or
Mm,
they're not going to love them or care about them based on who they are.
yeah,
But to
that's
kind of give you an idea of like what you said, like I see whenever someone is sitting with me, it's usually just around like whenever I ask them a question and I can kind of tell that they may not want to look at me, or they may not want to fully answer the question, or especially whenever I work with couples, I'll talk with them and then I'll have them actually turn to each other to share. And the more vulnerable or the more risky that whatever it is that I'm having them share, usually I can get an idea of like how much
mm,
confidence they have, how much self-esteem that they have, because they'll go and say that, and they won't say anything about what I just asked them to share. Right? They'll go off on a tangent and talk about something else, or they'll share like a little bit about what I asked them to share, because it's frightening.
it's
It's
scary.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll evade, or like say, change the subject, and like
Hmm.
like you don't see that or expect that, But no, I
Right.
I see. And it's again, you're seeing it in light of just how people, like say, those accused that that I think we all probably have, we do. Things
Right.
that got little children when they're shy, or something like that. You look off to the side, or you walk by a person and just try to make eye contact and smile. I mean, sometimes more than just low self esteem, but you can pick up when someone just not confident within themselves, and just unsure of themselves for whatever reason. I'm sure that's justifiable, but yeah, I'm sure that's
Yeah.
something that is a common theme amongst the work that you do.
Right.
Now, another
Well,
thing that
sorry to interrupt you.
sure.
Even whenever we were talking before we started recording, we were joking around about like body position.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
body position is so like therapists do a great job of listening to clients, but there's another part of this that we have to train ourselves to be really good at, and that's like noticing like how someone is, whether or not it's like how they're sitting, how they're presenting themselves. And some of the really great therapists are good at noticing really subtle shifts,
Hmm.
and whether or not it's facial cues or how someone's sitting. And so often whenever someone doesn't have low, whenever they have low self-esteem, they're sitting with like their shoulders hunched forward, or they're making themselves small, or they're talking really soft, or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually presenting as someone that is trying to make themselves seem like they're smaller.
Hmm. And again, they don't even realize it.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I just heard the word listening. Listening is with your eyes as well. Um, and I think that's a pretty powerful tool when you're, working with clients and kind of picking up the subtle pieces of it. But as a therapist, what would you say your powerful tools are when it comes to communicating, even verbally and non-verbally, to where you may see that a person is uncomfortable, they're limiting kind of what language they're providing, and you're wanting to build that rapport. Like, what are some tools that you find that helps you to kind of break those walls down?
So you're definitely right. Listening is one of the most important, because as long as someone is seeing that you're making eye contact, you're listening, whether or not you're nodding or saying yes, or you're kind of repeating what they said just so that they know that you heard them correctly.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that's something that like that's just groundwork. Like that's basic, that what you have to be able to do with anyone to hold any type of relationship with them. But something that makes a therapist and a client or a patient that we're working with, what really makes that connection is being able to let them express whatever's going on, and us helping them know that like we get it, we
Mm-hmm.
understand, and like really validating where they're coming from. There are some things that people share that if they shared with a friend or a family, they might not understand, or they might think less of them for that.
Yeah.
Whereas with a therapist or counselor, their goal isn't to judge you. Their goal is to understand you and to give yourself a place where you can talk about things that are actually going on with you. And someone's not only going to listen and hear what you're saying, right, but they're going to accept you for who you are, and that it's going to be okay that you can share this and you can be who you are, without fear of them judging you or telling you that you're wrong, or telling you that the way that you're thinking and living your life is incorrect,
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that.
That's huge when you say they don't judge you, because that's what holds people back. Whether it's judging by not responding or responding in a way that just kind of dismisses them, or giving them your own opinion. So I think that's, to me, that really hit home. People don't want to feel judged. And
Right.
regardless if it's right or wrong, technically that's not what you guys are here for. You guys to help them to
Right.
work through those areas in their life so that they can have that freedom or whatever they need to feel like they need to be released from. Or just, again, sometimes it's just about having conversations with a person, because you
Right.
don't know a person's past. Yeah, I always say that. Me, just as a person, I always try to make a point to smile at someone or just say hello, because I always say you just never know what they just experienced,
Right.
where
Never
they've
know what they're
been.
going through.
And we as humans, we get so caught up in our own world, in our own insecurities, that
Hmm.
we turn a lot of things into prejudgments. We're quick to, look at someone in a negative light. And again, that's just kind of keeping a person confined, and not allowing them to
Right.
ever feel that freedom of like being who they are, talking it through without someone, having something to say. So I think your work is very awesome,
Right.
in so many depths, and it's so needed across.
Right.
So now I know, because you're one person, such as myself, you only have limited capacity of your time, your ability to work with people. And so you also, you you mentioned a few months ago, but you also have a podcast show. So talk a bit
Hmm.
about your podcast show, and how do you see that as being a tool for others, given your profession?
Right. So my podcast is called Mental Health Insights. And this podcast was something that I was sitting here thinking that like there's only so many hours the week that I can see clients before like mentally I'm tapped out and then I'm providing a disservice. So I was sitting here thinking, okay, what other efforts can I put towards helping people understand mental health? And that's where Mental Health Insights was born. Is that I will either have an episode by myself where I'm talking about mental health related things, or I'll have another therapist on, or I've had people from other professions like yourself on that can
Mm-hmm.
help give us an idea of how different things impact our mental health, and really trying to make it simple. making it simple is something that's really important to me. And I think there's so many things in this world that we try to make way too complex, and mental health does not need to be one of those things. It is not complex. The way that our brain works is very complex, but the way that we can understand how mental health and mental illness starts to develop and what are some of the things we could do about it, that's not complex, right? Unless we want to make it complex. And so mental health insights is really there to try to simplify different things, whether or not that's like how substance use affects the brain, how anxiety works, or how trauma works, how it affects like our mind and our body, trying to get an idea of how to simplify that process so that anyone can listen to it and they can have a good baseline and a good understanding so they can at least have a conversation if they
Hmm.
choose to about their mental health or different things they're experiencing.
And like as you say, you simplify because again,
Mhm.
you hear mental health, it's a pretty big umbrella word,
Mhm.
and so many things can sit underneath what that means. And so again, it feels overwhelming for a person, or they just want to like not be a part of it. But once you get to understand it and understand the different intricacies of it and different varieties of it, it helps, like I say, it helps you understand it's not something uh, that it's not a jigsaw puzzle. It's
Mhm.
the way our body works is a jigsaw puzzle. But when it comes to, working through those I guess those habits or the things that we deal with when it comes to mental health, it's not something that we should feel is overwhelming. But that's why we have professionals like you to simplify it. I always say nutrition is simple too. It's simple.
Mhm.
It's when it comes to just the foods, it's not a magic, food. It's not a magic path. It's not this whole colorful like creation of world where you have to just live inside to
Right.
learn how to eat healthy. It's really, really, really simple. But again, when you don't know, it looks scary, right? It looks like
Right.
it's going to be a big change of life. But it's actually a part of life where you want to change because that's where you see the life that you want to, where you want to be, who you want to live, and what you deserve to have. And I think the same thing goes for the work that you do. Is it may feel daunting, but when people realize just have somebody to talk to, that's all we ask. And you never know that what it can take. There's no rules to that. There's no way that it should go. It's just sometimes just let it naturally just move forward as far as what comes out of those conversations. And again, you know, the how we overlap in those areas, I really see, that's important to make sure people know it's not a complex thing. It can be very simple. So like I say, your
Right.
podcast is kind of creating that platform.
Right. And, I like to think of it like this. If you have an athlete that's trying to get better, a coach helps them get better. And therapists and counselors, we aren't called coaches, but if you're wanting your mental health to get better so that you can maybe experience more happiness or more joy or just less stress in your life or just like ignite some type of passion or desire that you have, then you need someone to help you along with that. Athletes that practice on their own don't get better as fast as athletes that have coaches that are helping them work on specific things or try to focus on specific things. Same thing goes with counselors, and the same thing has to be with people that are working on their nutrition, right? Having
Mm-hmm.
someone in the corner that is helping them, like, hey, focus on this and just keep your eye on this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we build this up, then we can kind of look at that. It helps people build this pathway that they need towards the life that they want.
Yes, very true, very true. Craig, I can you can't have a better way of like wrapping this topic up. We definitely have to have you come on again because it's just like I say, it's so much that we can talk about, and I just think that's just more pieces that people need to hear. So I do appreciate you coming on today and just highlighting, just helping people understand what's the benefit of therapy, what it looks like, the things that you do as a therapist to make sure that the people are comfortable. And just now I want people to know how can they reach out to you, learn about your podcast, what ways can people connect with you?
Right. So, first things first, my podcast is only possible because of my practice. My practice is life care counseling, and I'm located in the Baldwin area here in St. Louis. The best way to reach me, though, is Craig at lifecarecounselingstl.com. That's Craig, Craig, Life Care Counseling, stl.com. That's all one word. And that gives you my email, and I'm usually pretty quick about responding to those different things. I love to answer questions, or like I said, a lot of questions are answered on my podcast too. And that
Hmm.
podcast again is Mental Health Insights, and you should be able to find it on most of the major podcast networks, as
Okay.
far as whether or not that's Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Google Podcast, or it's on Podbean as well. So hopefully it's pretty available. If not, you could always go to my website at lifecarecounselingstl.com, click on the blog, and I have all my podcasts listed there as well.
Yes. And can individuals, if they want to see you, do you have like a virtual platform as well as sessions, or everything is in person?
Yes, what's one thing that COVID's done is it's put a lot of counselors like me in a place where they're doing either all virtual or a hybrid version of virtual and in person, which is kind of where I'm at. So, yeah, definitely virtual appointments available as well
Okay.
as in person appointments, which is nice for those people that are in Missouri that are further out as well.
Yeah, you're right. It's very accessible, and I think that's a powerful thing about the silver lining that we've kind of faced through this pandemic is we're
Mhm.
still finding a way to help those individuals. We find we can help even more because you can still connect virtually versus only being in person. So, yes, guys, Craig Foust, again, you hear his passion and his work behind what he does. Again, he works with people from all different scopes of life, from all different areas and what the struggles and the trauma that they have. If you know anyone or yourself, feel like this is something that should be along your path, please reach out to him. If not, go to, he's the president of Psychotherapy of St. Louis, where there's a platform of so many different clinicians and therapists that can fit your needs. We just need to, as we're moving through life, just know life is bigger than what sometimes we kind of see in front of us. And opportunity to meet with individuals like Craig and myself as far as nutrition, we're here for you guys. So stay strong, stay healthy, and I will see you guys next week. And Craig, thanks again for being a part of this podcast show.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. Talk soon, guys. Okay, as always, I hope you enjoyed that wonderful conversation with my podcast guest today. So as we're going out, I want to also introduce you to another one of my podcast partners. You have seen them connected to my work since the beginning of the podcast, as well as many of my nutrition-centered projects. As one of the top healthiest granola companies, Banner Road continues to grow. Experience a unique combination of organic ingredients derived across the Midwest region. They believe in high quality, high flavor, and they have actually set the bar on how granola can be more than just a topping. Go to their website and find their products near your closest grocery store, or shop online and have their products shipped directly to you. Go to www.bannerroad.com or find them on Instagram at bannerroads.